is Renee Shepard, and I own and operate the King's Medieval Fair in Glenpool, Oklahoma. We have been in business for 5 years between Faire and Glenpool. When we moved from Faire to Glenpool, we had no idea that we were encroaching on fairy lands. None. And then we get there and you would not believe who showed up. This woman, oh my gosh, she was so beautiful. She had this headdress that had ostrich feathers, and her husband had goat's feet. He went around telling everybody that humans were filthy and cropped up everywhere like potatoes. And then he started turning people into potatoes. The son of the human king from our royal court, he wandered off again and was picking things he probably shouldn't have, and ended up picking mushrooms out of King Oberon's garden, if you can only imagine. Well, Oberon was not very happy about all of this, so he turned him into a goat. That's right, full goat with a crown. Yep. So our little satyr guy, his name is Pickle, he would go and feed the goat. So we went and asked everybody who came to the fair to choose a side. Were they going to fight for the fairy folk, or were they going to fight for the human folk? And they all got a little pin. Now, at the end of the fair, King Oberon decided, since it was a tie, that he would give the prince back to the king. And he changed him back into a human, so everything turned out all right in the end.
She said that? Well, that's not how it happened at all. Well, I need no introduction, mostly. I am Titania, Queen of the Fae Court.
That's right, she's pretty too.
And that's my husband, King Oberon, King of the Fae. Well, let me tell you our side of the story.
I'm trying to take a nap, keep it down.
Put some mushrooms in your ears.
No good, can't hear you.
Oh, you're bored near you know, a bunch of human fellers coming on over. Could possibly go wrong.
Hey, a bunch of weirdo potato lovers showing up on your back doorstep. What could possibly go wrong with that? Encroachers!
Rather than ask to be invited in and trot across my front lawn, a nice, beautiful mushroom ring. Now, these are sacred to our folk, you might understand. They're very near and dear to us. Used for good ceremonial purposes. And a bit of magic as well.
Yeah, that too.
So, here comes these humans, filthing the place up, throwing their own rubbish everywhere they went. Now comes the time where I decide we're going to go and take a visit and meet this king and queen.
I don't want to.
And oh, what a lovely necklace this lady had. Oh, she was very, very pretty indeed. She decided that seeing as that we had some sort of peace between us, we might as well exchange gifts. So she was going to hand me her jewels. I waited for them. I never really got them until much, much later.
Oh yeah, now we get to really what you wanted on the air. Free stuff.
This wee one, out of nowhere, comes by and kicks a mushroom over. You know, munched upon after being kicked over. Well, we can't let that go. We teach them not to be kicking mushrooms over. Well, you can say, please sir, don't turn me into anything unnatural.
Oh, that's not quite it. It was much girlier than that.
Please, don't put me into anything out of it. I'm going to never do it again. You know, a goat is not the worst thing that we could have turned him into.
That's right, we could have turned him into your sister.
Oh, how dare you, sir? My sister's a lovely thing, she is. Fairies are all shapes and sizes. And so he turned the king's son into a goat.
We had it coming.
It's an improvement.
Take all the money we saved him on pantaloons. He could just run around with nothing on. That's my favourite thing to do after dark.
The mighty King Oberon. Just picture it. He stayed with us a bit. He kept his crown until he ate the darn thing. If they were going to leave their filth about and going to be filthy creatures and just using their eyes, they might as well be potatoes. Potato. Because he says potato, I say potato.
Right, chop them up, mash them up, put them in a stew.
They kept squabbling back and forth. Well, finally I had enough of it. So doing the numbers and realising us fairy folk were gaining over the human folk, and then it would be a slaughter if I didn't intervene. I intervened on their behalf. I went and spoke with the Queen. Told her that this feud between the two kings...
Oh, is she here? She is pretty.
No, you don't.
If you see her, you tell her, say hi.
Me and the Queen had decided to tell the boys that there's enough of this fighting, enough of this killing and maiming and hurting each other. Instead, they are to have a feast every year to mark the occasion. And yes, the humans in penance are supposed to bring the goat cheese.
You're damn teatin'!
This year I'm going to invite the entire fairy class. Good and not so good alike.
Hi, I'm King Oberon, King of the Fae, from the King's Medieval Faire. So, I'm here today to tell you a story. And this is Pickle. You know, part of the court and his family. But don't tell the Queen. So, Pickle, you remember last year at the King's Fair when we had our nice, fun war with the human potatoes? So, if you recall, that human lad, that little monster came and tore up our fairy ring. Wouldn't you know? So, being the responsible Fae King, I turned him into a goat.
Poof! You are now a goat.
Now, the humans didn't like that, and I was like, you need to get out, you know. We're tired of you encroaching on our land, you potatoes. And the potatoes are like, hey, we're not going anywhere. Because they sound like little girls. Hey, we're the humans and we're the potatoes. And they're bland and tasteless they are. Nasty little beasties. So anyway, we turned him into a goat. So as we were going along throughout the day, we had some back and forth between me and the human king. The human queen though, she's a sweet potato, that one. She can come visit me anytime. That'd be alright. I mean, she's a very nice lady. I'm sure her and the Queen would get along lovingly having tea. And we find out that those little wee monsters, they agreed that they was going to give us tribute. And they were going to give us goat cheese. At the yearly cheese fest. It's going to be grand. Get in my belly, make me happy. That's where I like the cheese. Goat cheese, cow cheese. Oh, garlic cheese is delicious. No potato cheese though, tastes horrible. Cheese fest. Or cheese feast. I haven't decided yet which. Either way I'm getting cheese, and you know I love cheese. So, we made an accord with them, and their son Duncan the goat. You know, he ate so much we ended up having to call him Junkin. He ate like 12 of our bananas and 6 apples and a whole bushel of carrots. He could barely fit in his crown when I turned him back into a human.
Come see us at the King's Medieval Fair.
That's right. It's got goat cheese, and you know I love goat cheese.
I think he's your illegitimate son.
I want to be clear with this. I do not believe in magic. I love science, I love history, I'm a realist. So, that makes it pretty hard to explain what happened to me at last summer's medieval fair. I really love medieval fairs. I've been to quite a few. And every one of them usually has a royal tent where the king and queen can greet the fairgoers. These are the cast members that greet and welcome the newcomers to the kingdom. They'll issue quests to kids and knight them whenever they complete them. It's sort of a scavenger hunt. Well, last year's fair had 2 royal tents, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The weekend of the fair, the royal court was down a man. They needed a man to play the royal prince, and a friend suggested me. He already knew I had costumes I would wear when I went out and reenacted at these events. When the king would go to walk among the fair-goers, they would need a prince to stay behind at night the kids that would come to the tent. I said yes. Should not have said yes. Prince Duncan. That was my character's name. Duncan. Didn't pay very well, but it was a good gig. So, I was telling you about the 2 royal tents. Well, this fair had a whole fairy court as well. That's Fae fairy, with a king and a queen. Phenomenal costumes, the best ones I've ever seen. They had this shtick going where the Fae were the real inhabitants of the land, and that the human court had imposed on the fairy court's land. Yeah, it was a riot. You know, just like Europeans coming straight in and taking land from Oklahomans. I'm pretty sure everyone got the irony. It was hilarious, until it wasn't. And if I could just go back in time and not say yes. The fairy tent had this huge circle of mushrooms around it. They looked pretty real, but they were big enough I assumed they were fake, until I tripped on one. It squished like any real mushroom. I looked around to see if anyone had noticed. I didn't want to lose this gig halfway through the weekend. But the fairy queen saw it. She screamed like a banshee, and her husband came running. Now you need to know, he had this costume on like he was a satyr. A full Mr. Tumnus from Narnia. For goat legs, right? Until that point, I'd only seen him sitting on his throne. I had assumed his real legs were in the chair and the goat legs were fake. But he came running when his wife started screaming at me. They were real. They were real. The fairy queen was just screaming, "Look what he's done! Look what he's done!" 1 minute, I'm just kneeling there trying to get the mushroom back together while she's screaming at me. And then it just gets very weird. Seriously weird. You know that dream that everyone has where you're naked in a big crowd? The feeling of just complete exposure. That's what it felt like, but I was wide awake. I suddenly could feel a draft all over. All over. And I become very hungry. I was climbing over everything around, just looking for food. And it was a fair, so there was popcorn and corn dogs around. Even the wooden sticks of the corn dogs tasted good. Not very proud of that. Best fair food ever. Someone gave me a mostly eaten turkey leg and I ate the whole thing, even the bone. It's like I had a tapeworm or something. I was so hungry. There was this little kid in the Fae King's tent who got a platter full of fruit that he kept giving me. Sweetest kid ever. And he was just hugging me, saying, "It'll be okay, it'll be okay." He led me all over the fair, and people were just laughing at me. It really gave a guy a complex, right? I assumed he was the son of the Fae King because he had goat legs, and his looked pretty real too. So later, at the end of the fair, there was this lady arguing with the Fae King, and she kept pointing back at me. Next thing I remember, I'm waking up in the Human King's tent, not feeling very well. Everyone was looking at me like they were worried. I had a massive stomach ache and a bit of a headache. My crown didn't fit my head anymore. And when I took it off, there was a big chunk right out in front. I know what you're thinking. It is the only thing that makes sense. When I was putting the mushrooms back together, I must have absorbed something through my skin, and then just hallucinated the rest. That's what I thought for a while. But there were people there at the fair who knew me. They swear they saw the Fae King turn me into a goat. But if they didn't also get the mushroom on them, then what happened? Maybe it was a group hypnosis or a mass delusion or something. But then how do I explain this? I've got some bumps on my head that aren't going away. Keeping my hair a bit longer to hide them well enough. There's even a video of a goat wearing a crown, my crown, at the event. Being led around the fair on a rope. It was a screaming goat too, because man could it wail. It fainted every time the little goat boy let it past the Fae King's tent. It'd just fall over. The Fae Court found that hilarious. I saw in the newspaper a picture of the goat chewing on Prince Duncan's crown, the crown I was wearing, which suddenly made sense with my stomachache resolving itself 2 days later. I saw online that the Fae King and Queen are going to be back this year, which I don't understand. Sure, they're entertaining, but anything, and I mean anything, can happen. I do not believe in magic, I never have, but after last year, I do believe in fairies. Come see us at the King's Medieval Fair. I saw that the Fae King and Queen will be back this year, so I won't be.
Hi, I'm Pickle from the King's Medieval Fair. Do you want to learn about King Oberon and the Fairy Wars?
Well, I'm King Oberon, and this is Pickle. He's related, but don't tell the Queen why.
I met a satyr named Lord Oberon at the King's Medieval Fair. The humans moved on to the fairyland. I was working for both sides, because I'm part Fae and human. Some of my favorite things are being a spy for the Fairy Queen. So the fairies kidnapped the human son and turned him into a goat. And that started the human-fairy war. I got along with him. I fed him some carrots, some bananas, some apples, some grapes. He got turned back into a human after the war. I think the humans had their dose of medicine. I heard the dark fairies were coming this year. Dark fairies don't get along with humans or other fairies. There is going to be a new war this year. It's like dark fairies versus light fairies. For those of you who ask if the dark fairies are like the bad guys, then you are correct. I am going to be the light fairies. Come to the King's Medieval Fair in Glenpool, Oklahoma.